Hey everybody else, of course, it's TK. I think Kemp is Friday. I'm your host, the Kempire, and we're back. As you already know, anytime there's anything big politically going on, we have to have our political analyst and expert, Matt Stevens from ProduceMedia.com, drop by the show. So Matt is back. Welcome, Matt. What's going on, Matt?
Thank you so much. Hey, what's going on? Thanks so much for having me back.
Of course, Matt. It's been some time, but when this major event happens in politics, we have to go to someone that really breaks it down for us, especially those that aren't familiar with what this means. A government shutdown. Should we be very concerned? Should we take all our money out the bank? What does a government shutdown mean?
Well, taking all the money out the bank, yes, you should be concerned. No, you shouldn't be taking all your money out the bank. And what it means is that basically the federal government is partially shut down. And what that means is that probably, mm, I think it's about 700 to 800,000 workers have been furloughed
Hmm.
indefinitely, at least until the shutdown is over.
Hmm.
There are still a couple million more that are working and are on the job. And the easiest way to explain it is that the entire federal government has been divided into two big categories. There's essential and non-essential workers. And so all of the non-essential worker services, departments, and things like that are the ones that have taken the loss in the government shutdown. The essential services, such as the president, Congress, which some people would argue about Congress being essential right now, but president, Congress, the military, anything dealing with national security or protecting the interests of the American people, border security and patrol, that kind of thing, are still open for business. Now, are they being paid? Is the good question, and I do not believe that they are being paid. A lot of them, well, the president is being paid, and Congress is being paid because their money comes differently. But all of the other services, some of them are working without pay. Some, if not all, are
Wow.
working without pay that are still on the job. But yeah, that's really what this means. And so there are things that during a government shutdown that can't happen. So you have um, uh, with the FDA, you have meat that's being imported or things that are, well, not meat, but you have items that are being imported that cannot be inspected uh, by the FDA at the um, here in Atlanta at the CDC. There are certain trials and things dealing with medicine and infectious diseases that can't be monitored because of the government shutdown. I have a friend that works for the Department of Education, and so he's been furloughed. There are people that are transportation department, wherever. It's all over. There's a little bit here, a lot there, but it just means that certain functional parts of the government simply do not work right now.
I mean, for some people, they're like, "Wow, it's a couple of days off from work." But what do I mean? How can this? Um, because we've been slowly making progress over the last few years in regards to our economy.
Mhm.
How can this be detrimental to the economy or America in general?
That's a very good question because when you think about it, people say, "Oh yeah, it's a couple days off work," and I'm sure for some people, yeah, it was probably a welcome 1, 2, maybe 3 days off from work.
Mhm.
But I mean, you have 700,000 people that have been furloughed, so that's 700,000 people that are in DC, or well, not they're not all in DC, but many are in DC. They're not getting paychecks. There are businesses in DC and around these national parks that are closed that depend on the business of tourists and travelers and government workers and people going to lunch and dry cleaners and all those different kind of miscellaneous and ancillary services that are not getting that traffic now because all of these people are not going to work.
Mhm.
There have been estimates anywhere from 200 to 300 million dollars per day of an
Wow,
economic impact on, yeah, on our
a day.
economy because of the government shutdown per day. So the
Wow.
last government shutdown was in like 96. At that rate, that you're in, clearly, obviously, the billions of dollars probably at that point. My math is kind of faulty, but yeah, it's a
I,
lot of money.
Yeah, I remember reading somewhere where it said, in 1995 and 96, where we had the last government shutdown, it was approximately
Hmm.
$1.4 billion that we lost.
I I totally believe that, and that you have to remember that's 1.54 billion in probably in $95. So adjust that for inflation, and it's going to be even more when you take it up to 2013.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a big impact. You have that many people in, especially all in that D.C., Northern Virginia, Maryland area that aren't going to work,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's a major impact, very major impact. And then also too is on tourism. All of the national parks are closed. I
Mhm.
know here in Atlanta, the King Center is closed. Kennesaw National Mountain is closed. There are different things around here that are closed as well. In New York, Statue of Liberty, which was already closed because of Sandy, it would have also been closed too because of this government shutdown. So
Wow. And then the big thing,
yeah,
and part of the reason why I wanted to have you here is because we talk about everything here on TKIF, but I was listening, throughout the week in regards to the true impact of what this is, and I think people need to realize this is more than just a couple of people off of work. There are thousands of people that are probably living paycheck to paycheck. You have to put yourself in their place and say, God forbid someone said you're not going to get your paycheck next week. How would you feel, and how would that affect your life? So
right,
that's part of the reason why I wanted to have this discussion here on the show, because this is a serious
yeah,
matter that can have
it's
detrimental
very
effects.
serious. Yeah.
So
And
what
then they're also, just to interject real quick, they're
yeah.
also wondering. I mean, it, I think in shutdowns past where they've been off work for a couple of days and then they go back and retroactively pay them. They're not sure if, in some cases, some people may even be retroactively paid. So it's almost as
Wow.
if you were off work and didn't even have a job while you were gone. It's not like, oh well, I'll get an extra check to cover what I lost.
Wow.
I don't know that to be fact yet, but I
Yeah.
have read some type of uh, theory about that. People kind of suggesting that that may happen or kind of throwing
Wow.
around that idea.
That would be terrible. But a lot of people want to
Yep.
know, why did this happen? How does a government shutdown happen?
It's complicated, but to explain it in the prune juice, easy to kind of digest way is basically the federal government is supposed to provide and pass an annual budget every year. The
Mhm.
president provides his version of the budget. He sends it over to Congress. They debate it and go back and forth. Well, they have not been able to agree on an annual budget in quite some time. So what they do is when they do not pass an annual budget, what they do is they start operating off of what are temporary budgets essentially, but they call those continuing resolutions. And
Mhm.
continuing resolutions can last anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. The one that we're in debate about now is 6 weeks long, so it would have only carried us to the middle of November. That continuing resolution is what they're arguing about, and they were not able to agree on that and pass it in order to fund the government starting on October 1st. October 1st is also the start of what would have been, it is the start of the new budget year, but if they were passing annual budgets, they would only need to pass them. The new budget would have kicked into effect for the whole year starting on October 1st until September 30th of next year. So they didn't agree on that. That's why the government, that's why the workers were furloughed. But the reason behind them not agreeing on that is that the House Republicans wanted to delay the start of Obamacare, which strangely enough also started on October 1st. They
Mhm.
wanted to delay the start of that for another year. So they said, well, we'll pass your budget. We will fund the government for another 6 weeks, but Obamacare needs to start on October 1st of 2014 instead of 2013.
Mhm.
That would have taken Obamacare closer to the midterm elections, and they would have been able to use the system to, of course, talk bad about it and say how horrible it was for America, this, that, and the other, so they could probably help them win more seats and more elections um, come next November when it's time for the 2014 midterm elections.
Mhm.
So that still doesn't make sense because if you're following along with what I'm saying, it still doesn't make sense. I will try to make it even more plain. Let's say you owned a house, right? And
Mhm.
you lived in a community where you had an HOA. And you said, you know what? I really don't like the landscaping company that is mowing my lawn and is cutting my shrubbery. So you know what I'm going to do? Because I don't like them, and until you get a lawn care company in here that I like, I'm not going to pay my car note.
Mhm.
That's exactly what has happened. If you want to just break it down in simple terms, that is what happened. They have decided to not pay other bills because Obamacare is not in this continuing resolution. Obamacare is already paid for, or it's being paid for out of other sources and taxes and fees and things like that they've collected collected from other areas.
Hmm.
So, just like they'll pull your HOA fees out of a separate pile of money, that has nothing to do with the money that you send to your car finance company every month
Yeah.
or to your water bill, your utilities for the month, or the electric company. They have absolutely nothing to do with who cut your lawn, but uh,
So
they've
this,
drawn this really squiggly kind of line in the dark from Obamacare over to the continuing resolution because they're so obsessed with uh, defunding Obamacare, delaying it, and delegitimizing this president.
and it's really interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about Obamacare because I think people are still very confused on what that is, and I'm a strong believer that if you really want to know, really do your research. Don't just go by what you hear on the news. But where are we today in regards to resolving this issue of this government shutdown? Because, like I said, it's really detrimental, and it can have really negative effects on our government and our economy.
Well, the president called over the leaders of Congress today,
Mm,
actually this evening, I believe, to try to meet and see what progress they could make and could they come to some type of agreement. And in short, there was none. The House Republicans are holding their position, and the Democrats are rightfully holding theirs. And the president has said outright that he's not going to negotiate on Obamacare at all. It is a law that was passed in both houses of Congress. He
mhm.
signed it into law, and the Supreme Court upheld that law when
Yeah.
it was challenged in court. So, basically, they've gotten nowhere. Um, and so we're waiting for one side to blink. I like to say that it's three against one. You have the House Republicans versus, well, really four against one. You have the House Republicans versus the House Democrats. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's three against one. House Republicans versus the Senate, which is democratically controlled, the White House, which is obviously controlled by a Democrat, and the American people. The American people, if you just look at the raw polling data without turning on anybody's TV, going to Fox or MSNBC, CNN, whatever you watch, if you go to raw, just look up some raw polling data on the internet, it will show you that people are overwhelmingly against this government shutdown. Like
Wow.
overwhelmingly, like horror movie overwhelmingly against this government shutdown.
And this cannot be good for the Republicans, especially when it's an election year. Is this people are not going to forget about this?
No, they're not going to easily forget about this, and I hope the Democrats don't allow the American people to forget about this. One small thing I think that's saving them is that we're not in an election year right now,
Hmm.
so we've got about another 13 months until the midterms.
Hmm.
Republicans are trying to position this as something like, oh, well, it's because we threw out four ideas and the Democrats didn't bite on any of the ideas, so they don't want to bring the government out of shutdown, which is not true. The Democrats have been trying to negotiate on this, um, I believe, continuing resolution and funding probably since May, and it hasn't. The Republicans have not wanted to do that at all.
A lot of people,
So,
you'll see. I'm sure you've seen, jokes on Instagram and things like, people want to know why is it that Congress is still getting paid, if the government shut down.
well, I found this out today that Congress gets paid out of a different pot of money. Congress and the president, by law, and I believe it might be in the Constitution, that their pot of money is different than the pot that everything else comes out of. Your Department of Education and Defense Department and Veterans Affairs and Interior and Commerce and all that, that's all considered discretionary spending. So it's kind of like that spending that you can say, well, okay, we want to up the Defense Department budget, we want to lower education this year, that kind of, basically having the discretion. That's where the word comes from. But their pot of money is different. Uh, the president, the 535 members of Congress are paid separately, and so that's why they have still been getting their paychecks because by law, you have to pay them. Now, by law, they don't have to by law accept their paycheck. I actually put a post on PruneJuiceMedia.com today that said that of the 535 members of Congress, only 66 of them have publicly gone on record saying that they will either defer or donate their pay during the shutdown to charity, or they'll just ask to not be paid. Which
How
of
many of
course
those
they're
were
free to do that.
Republicans?
You know what? There were some Republicans in there actually. Not all the Republicans have been totally, on the side of shutting down the government. I think maybe in the votes, yes, but I think really from a PR, because remember these are excellent PR people, and well, they have excellent PR people around them, and they know the power of public perception, and they know that they've already shut the government down. We're not gonna. Some of us don't need to add insult to injury and fuel to the fire by also drawing a $174,000 paycheck from the government,
How
whether or
much?
not, because a lot of people don't
Like
know
how
that
much?
107, yeah, 174 with three zeros after it. That's how much your average member of Congress gets paid. And then it
Really?
goes up from there to, yeah, to Speaker of the House gets like 223. Don't quote me on that number, but it's
I
somewhere
am in
close
the
to that.
wrong
You're in the
business.
wrong
They start
profession. And
my
then the
election
vice president,
campaign.
yeah, the vice president gets like, I think I saw 233, and the president gets an even 400,000.
Well, I think the president, his
So
pay is entirely too low
it's low. Yeah.
for what he has
Yeah,
to
people are
deal
getting
with.
$20 million a film, and the president's only getting $400,000 a year. Yeah, it's kind of
I
low.
mean, he is living rent free and not paying for food, but
That well, no, no, no. I think he does pay for food. I think they
really,
do pay for food at the White House. Yes, they
Obama,
pay for food at the
look,
White
you just
House.
gained my respect. Because ain't
Yeah.
nobody want
Well,
all
they
that
have to.
stress for that amount of
They
money.
yeah,
If
they
you guys
have to.
just tuned in, of course, we are here with our political analyst and expert, Matt Stevens from PruneJuiceMedia.com, and we're talking about the government shutdown. And, speaking about Obamacare, I mean, there was this really funny parody on Jimmy Kimmel this week about Obamacare versus um, Affordable Care Act. And a lot of people that were interviewed did not realize that it's the same exact law. It was really funny to watch because a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm all for the Affordable Care Act, but I'm totally against Obamacare. I mean, do you see that confusion a lot?
I don't see it a lot, but I have never actually honestly asked people that direct question of which one do you like better, Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. I think that's actually a very funny, when you explained it to me, that was a very funny kind of setup, and
Mm,
that's been one of the messaging problems. And I think early on, well, not early on, but maybe in the past year plus, the Obama team and Democrats have realized that there is actually power in accepting that label of Obamacare. And so what
mm-hmm.
they started to do was just to go ahead and call it Obamacare themselves and turn it from a negative into a positive, because
Yeah,
so
I
many
noticed that.
people had become, you know, had knew it as Obamacare. So
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, and for those people that don't understand what Obamacare is, as you said, it started this week. Um, there are people are very confused by that, and I can understand the confusion because it's not just one set of it's not just one understanding. It's a law that has many layers to it.
right.
But what is the basic gist of Obamacare, and what is some of the biggest protests against it, and are there cons to it?
Well, obviously there are pros and cons to anything.
Hmm.
Just a small correction that Obamacare, some of the facets of Obamacare actually started back in, I believe, 2010. And it's been a slow rollout since then. Just small things like being able to stay on your parents' health insurance until 26, and insurance companies not being able to drop you for pre-existing condition, and
Mm.
getting rid of lifetime limits on how much you could charge against your insurance before they would drop you. So small things like that, plus a few other things. What happened this week is that the actual consumer portion of it really came to the forefront. So now you're able to go to healthcare.gov, I believe it is, and actually pick out, by your state, pick out plans
Mm.
that would best serve you, if you're looking for insurance. Now, the confusing thing is that and I'm gonna give you something to help with that confusion. But the confusing thing for a lot of people is they either have Medicare or Medicaid or whatever they're getting, or private insurance from their or employer-based insurance.
Hmm.
If you have that kind of insurance, there's really no change for you. Obamacare, what they've been rolling out this week is for people like myself who are self-employed and are
Mm.
responsible for getting health insurance on my own. And so now instead of having to go to one company and then they're, jacking up my prices and going to other companies and really kind of not knowing what the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, now there are these um, insurance exchanges. And so I can look at 5 or 6 companies in my state all at the same time, and they have to compete for my business. Also, uh, the law now brings a lot more of the uninsured into the health insurance system,
Mm.
actually through a system of fines. So if you, I think it's after 2014, if you do not have health insurance and don't show like some type of severe financial hardship, there's at least a $95 penalty on your taxes or something like that for not having health insurance. So it brings more people into the marketplace. Anytime you bring more people in the marketplace, it lowers prices. And
Mm.
so those lower prices translate to somebody like me who goes on the exchange and I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, well, this plan is only $200 a month, but I've been paying $300 for the past, however many years. And so
Mm.
it creates that competition there, and you can do that in all of your different states. Obamacare also brings a lot of, in certain states, it brings a lot more people onto the Medicaid rolls, which is the insurance program for the poor.
Mm.
Brings a lot more of them into the fold, and let's see what else. There's a lot of like things like that going on all at one time. But the insurance marketplace and healthcare.gov will be a really good source for that kind of information. You asked me about the cons of it.
Yeah.
I think one of the cons that I've seen is just how people are, it's still that we're still in that ramp up period. People don't know what they can and can't do, where they can and can't go. Does my doctor change? Does my insurance change? That kind of thing. So I think the messaging could have been a lot better leading up to October 1st. There
Hmm.
have obviously been glitches in the system that they have admitted to, because there were so many people this week that went to the website, which is a good thing, to
Hmm.
check out what the insurance marketplace was doing in their state. um, I Let me see. I don't think that Obamacare is a job-killing socialist type of, insurance fraud that we're being sold to by the president. So I'm not, that's definitely not a con. I think a lot of the cons are smaller, but the cons vary for different people. I'm probably going to see lower health insurance.
Hmm.
But for somebody that works at a cushy 9 to 5 job every day and has job security, they're not really going to see that much difference, and so they may be willing to nitpick a little bit more. So it's one of those things that's going to look a little bit different depending on who you are, how old you are, how sick. Do you have other insurance to cover you, that kind of thing. So
So pretty much, Obamacare really is trying to get more people health care. It's not necessarily going to affect someone like me
yes,
that already has health care from a major corporation, but
right.
someone that doesn't have health care or has doesn't have the best pricing on health care.
Exactly, or somebody who is being pimped over their healthcare prices.
Mm.
Because health insurers have been known, I'm sure you've probably heard this or seen this, to charge exorbitant amounts of money for coverage, for seemingly healthy people, and then they're really delivering that one-two punch to people who are sick.
Wow.
And so that will come down as you see a little bit more competition. And so I think that's really what Republicans are afraid of, is that that competition means that some of those health insurers that have probably donated to their campaigns are not going to have that as much discretionary income as they would like.
Mm.
So you see a lot of pushback actually from them,
And
from
it
the
seems as if the
Republicans about
public is
that.
very much aware that that's what this is. And I think there are some that are very confused that they believe because of Obamacare, their insurance is going to be affected in a drastic way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, once people kind of figure out where the chips fall for them in
Hmm.
Obamacare, um, employers, for instance, over 50 people that do not provide health insurance are now being mandated to provide that to their employees.
I'm gonna start
There's going to
firing
be tax
people.
breaks, and they're going to try to you start firing people, or they may, or try to do like a workaround around that to say that they really don't have 50 employees, but
I got a
there's
couple
incentives.
interns.
Right. Yeah, I have 49 contractors and 1 employee. So yeah, but yeah. So it's really about people getting that information. And I was telling you there was something I could use to help. Is there's a post on my website, and I believe I put this up. I want to say it was on Tuesday, the 1st of October, and it was a very helpful, and this is going to sound so silly, but it's a cartoon, and it was a cartoon that was made by the Kaiser Foundation, and it's they call themselves the U-Tunes, and it explains clearly and concisely exactly what Obamacare is in 6 minutes.
Wow.
And when I saw it on somebody's Facebook page, they said, "Oh, this, it's really helpful cartoon." I'm thinking, okay, cartoon Obamacare, what is this about? Because I'm always into the like political snark and that kind of thing. But when I watched it, I knew a lot of what they were talking about, but it was very helpful, and I posted it on PruneJuiceMedia.com on
And
the
we're gonna post it
first.
on all our social media today. No, because
Yeah,
I think
please do, please do. I'll tweet you the link because it's
that,
so helpful. Like it really got to the point.
and I think it's important, and it's so funny that the parody that Jimmy Kimmel did on his show. I thought, although it was funny, it is almost a true reflection of, I think, what people think of Obamacare. You can ask anyone, "Oh, do you agree with Obamacare?" And they're like, "No, no, blah, blah, blah." But then I would have to ask them, "What is Obamacare? Can you really give me
Right.
an explanation of what that is and how that's going to affect you and your insurance?" I think there's a lot of people that are very much confused, or want to be confused, or want to be ignorant about it. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you here, so we can have an open discussion. Because I'm willing to say Obama's wrong and say, you know what, this is not the right, um, system that he's put in place. But we won't know. And I mean, at least he's trying to make a change in a system that needed change.
Yeah, and I have to give him 100% credit for that because the way the health insurance industry and healthcare in general, that kind of cliff that we're going off of as far as pricing and
Mhm.
hospital stays and how much insurance is and what they will and won't cover, and they want to cover this but they don't want to cover that, and just all this runaround. Somebody, something, and I think it took the government, the federal government, an entity that big to step in because it people were just literally getting just bludgeoned. Like, you know there was so many medical bankruptcies and or bankruptcies due to medical bills and expenses and things like that. And that's no way to live. That's no way to build a family and the American dream, as they call it. But yeah, that's exactly what it we had to get to this point of something. But there's just a faction of people that don't want to see that happen. They feel like the free market is going to correct everything. And clearly, I mean, we've been on free market for as long as I've been alive, and it hasn't worked well to this point. So, you know, something has to change or had to change.
Most definitely, and this is exactly why I wanted to have this discussion tonight about Obamacare. But of course, the government shutdown. If you want more information on Matt Stevens, I want everyone to check out his website, prunejuicemedia.com. He explains it in layman's terms, and that's exactly why he is our political analyst and expert here on TKIF. Thank you so much, Matt, for being here on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me as always. I enjoy it.